Alright, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, guys. I'm here joined with someone who's very well known, frankly, in the MMA community. He's been described as one of, if not the best MMA coaches in the world, actually. And our good friend Joe Rogan, who I've made a video about recently, is one of the people who actually described him with such a description. We should maybe get a video. We'll get a cutting of Joe Rogan saying this just to see exactly what he said. Let's take a look at what Joe Rogan said.
You've got Firas Zahabi, who is probably my first choice, or one of them.
He'd be my number one. Him or Lisa Bowling.
As a striking coach, you mean?
As an everything coach.
Yeah,
Firas is a mastermind.
come on.
John Donner is another mastermind. Matt Hume and Firas Zahabi, to me, are commensurate. I think they're exactly the same level. They're both wizards. Both those guys, they're masters. Matt Hume had more MMA fights, I think. Firas had a lot of kickboxing fights, but Firas is like nasty on the ground, and he's a super genius when it comes to like his analytical mind, the way he breaks down fights. He breaks down street fights. There's YouTube videos where he breaks down, he breaks down how this guy came at a guy and the guy cracked this guy with a left hook, and he explains the footwork, draws it in a diagram.
He's also young.
Yeah. And you know what he also
put out a video where he's testing guard work and ground and pound on guards. What guard works best for ground and pound? He did this shit. He put it on YouTube. He put it up. So he had him, Gary Tonin, and I think Gordon Ryan. They had like some dude jump with boxing gloves, jump in their guard and start pounding them. And in the video,
see, guys, I'm not joined with just anybody. I'm joined with someone who's got high notoriety in the MMA community. But what people don't know about him, Firas Zahabi, what people don't know about Firas Zahabi is that he's actually very well grounded in philosophy, and he's becoming even more grounded now in theology as well. Just get us started, Firas. What was your kind of experience with theology? You were telling me something about your dad when you were younger.
Yeah, when I was young, my father, he came from Lebanon with not much of an education. He was a mechanic. He really grew up in the garages, learning a trade. In that time, you didn't really go to school for long. Of course, there was a civil war in Lebanon, so they were refugees to Canada, etc.
Yeah.
Well, my introduction to Islam, the first time I heard about Islam was my father invited a preacher to come to preach to his kids, to teach them the deen, teach them the religion.
Yeah.
And I remember those lessons really well, quite well, and they served me my entire life. And I would say it gave me even an edge in life because all my peers were not Muslim. They were 99% Christian or Jewish. And a lot of secular families and kids, etc. And there was some lessons that really I felt helped me out through life and gave me a strong edge, because I found, like, especially in the West, people struggle very emotionally. They're very emotionally involved. And they have their ups and downs emotionally, but my emotions were always very in check. And it was one thing that he told me that I think if a regular person were to hear it, they would take it at heart. They would be shocked. And he told me, asked me, who do you love more, your mother or God?
How old were you at this?
I was maybe 8 or 9, maybe 10 years old. He asked me, what's more dear to you, your mother or God? And I was a young kid, I said, my mother.
Yeah.
I didn't think much about God or whatnot. And he said to me, no. He said, think about it. He questioned me very gently, very nicely. He said, who gave you your mother? Who gave you everything you have? You have to trace back everything to God. And he told me, look, maybe one day your mother, she gets sick and dies, and you're alone. You can't base your life on one person.
Right.
You can't base your life on money or fame or fortune, because all these things can be gone, can be taken out from underneath you. Yeah. And he told me, you always have to depend on God first and foremost, above all. And this gave me a very, very strong mental grounding. Yeah. Because anything that happened to me in life, anything bad that happened to me in life, and he also used to tell me, there's nothing that's going to come your way in life that you can't handle. God never sends you an obstacle, a test, you cannot handle. Yeah. So when something would come my way, I'd be nervous, I'd be scared, I'd remember. And it gave me a strong courage. And it made me very, very, I don't know how to say, but it made me very good with relationships, because I would never try to behave in a way to make you like me, because I was never like a suck up to people.
Yeah.
Because I would never see somebody as a deity. There was God, and then there was everybody else. So I never put people up on a pedestal, so to speak. I think that helped me tremendously, because when I would see my competitors or I would see somebody, an intimidating obstacle, I would always remind myself, don't look at them so high. I've been to so many big moments in sports, etc. And I always told myself, this is nothing. This is not that big of a deal. And it always lowered things. And it always took away intimidation. And it was a very, very, very powerful lesson for me when I was young.
Wow. Well, a lot of people will be listening to that. I think a lot of people will, obviously that will resonate for a lot of people, but we're living in the West, and obviously a lot of people in the West don't believe in the existence of God. How would you reason to say an atheist or someone who doesn't believe in God, the existence of God? What would you say?
Well, you see, there are three ways of knowing something.
Okay.
Primarily, let's keep it really basic, okay? Because philosophy it's an ocean.
Right.
The primary way you can know something is through your senses. Okay, you touch, smell, taste, hear, empiricism. Then we have deduction, mathematics. 1, 2, 3, 4, things are in order. 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah.
And then we have a third way of knowing something. It's called intuition. Now, intuition, nobody can debate your intuition. So, you can tell me the temperature of that tea. We can measure it.
Yeah.
It's objective. We can tell you the number of people in this room. We can count it. It's deductive. However, the taste of the tea, or what it's like to be you, this is all intuitive. And we have something to us we call consciousness. We are self-aware. This self-awareness is something metaphysical. It is beyond physics. We cannot put it in a test tube. There's a part of us we cannot put in a test tube. So it reminds me of a little example I like to give, a little question I like to ask people, because I often try to teach people about self-reflection and consciousness. And today the West is so dominated by materialism.
Yeah.
It seems to be that.
And for those who don't know, what is materialism?
What is materialism? That's such a great question. That's why this little anecdote is something that I think really helps people learn the difference between the great questions on substance philosophy. So, basic question, basic thought experiment. I'm building a robot. Yeah.
Okay.
And we talked about this before, but for the audience.
Right.
I'm building a robot. I'm building a Muhammad 2.0.
By the way, I take some of Firas's lines. We talk sometimes. I take some of his lines and I use them in Speaker's Corner. All right. Now you know some of the.
We're corresponding. I take some of his lines, plenty. Believe me.
No, not really. But anyways, people would have heard me say what you're saying now. So go ahead.
It's
someone special heard. Remember the robot one?
Oh yeah, the robot one.
Yeah, so I like to tell people, okay, let's say we're building a robot. Trying to learn a deep philosophical question and trying to learn it through a thought experiment is more easy than a long-winded explanation.
Yeah.
We're building a robot. Okay, so the robot, instead of skin, he has sheet metal. Instead of bones, he has steel bones. Instead of blood, he has oil. Instead of a heart, he has a pump. Instead of an eye, he has a camera. Instead of this, he has this. Everything is machined. He talks like you, acts like you, he has a program. We program him to talk like you. We program him to think like you, to learn like you. He has your IQ. If I pinch him, he says, ow. If I tell him a joke, he laughs. But I programmed him to do this. Then he's exactly like you. The only thing we know the difference between you and him is he's made of steel. When we touch him, you're flesh and bone, he's steel. And then one day I come and I destroy this Mohammed Hijab 2.0. Now the question I have, there's no wrong answer right now. We're not trying to see a right or wrong answer. I'm asking you, did I commit murder or did I destroy a property?
Destroyed property.
I destroyed a property.
Yeah.
So somebody who says I committed a murder, he would say, look, I'm a materialist. Meaning the only thing that exists, and there are many people out there who are materialists, they believe that the only thing that exists is the material substance. They would say, look, that Mohammed Hijab 2.0 is exactly like you. He should have his rights like you. He's 100% a human. Because there's nothing more to you than substance material. Material substance. Now the people who say, no, you just damaged property, we gotta ask them, okay, what was missing? What was the difference? What's the difference? Arabic's not too bad. What is the answer to that question?
Then we go to the problem of consciousness.
There's a problem of consciousness.
Yeah.
Now, how do you know consciousness? Do Do you know it deductively, mathematics? Or do you know it empirically through your senses? Neither. We know it intuitively. Now, because we know something intuitively, that shows us that science is not absolute. Now, I love science. I could sit here and praise science for 1 hour if you like. But I'm going to save you 1 hour, okay? Take my word for it. I'm intrigued by science. I read up on science. I believe in science. I think it's one way to know something.
Yeah.
However, does it tell me the truth with a capital T, as I like to say?
Yeah.
Not truth, everyday truth, comfortable truth.
Yeah.
We're not thinking too deeply here.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about the truth. Philosophers are interested in the truth, the capital T.
Yeah.
Can science give me the capital T truth? The answer is no. The answer is no. Because it couldn't tell me even about my own consciousness. So Leibniz, one of the great thinkers that I'm very fascinated with, he said, look, think about it this way. If I were really tiny, thought experiment, okay, and I was walking around in your brain, I would see neurons firing, I would see blood flowing, I would see a brain, a physical brain, I would see all sorts of things. But I wouldn't see life, I wouldn't see your thoughts, I wouldn't hear the song you're playing in your head that you hear in your mind, I wouldn't hear it. All I would see was the information. Now this information is being transformed somewhere, somehow, into an experience. But this experience is outside the test tube, as I like to say. I can't put it in a test tube. It's what we call in philosophy metaphysical. It is not physical. So if I'm going to adopt a dogmatic scientific method, meaning it's science or nothing, I'm denying the thing that makes me most human. The thing that's in my face 24 hours a day that I cannot deny. And you know, this is a lot of philosophy in a few minutes. You know, we have the cogito, I think therefore I am, which proves intuition is above all. First, it's the first thing that you know. It's actually the only thing that we know. Now, we were talking earlier today, what is the difference between believing something and knowing something?
For those who don't know, what's the cogito?
Cogito is something that Descartes said that many people misunderstand. He said, look, I think therefore I am. And people laugh. Well, the guy finally figured out he exists. Ha 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 ha. It's not that he figured out he exists. He knew that before. What he figured out is that I now know something. I don't believe something because everything is belief save the cogito. To that point, he said, look, let me cross-examine everything I believe.
Yeah.
And he found out that everything he believed, he could doubt it. His doubt was so extreme, we call it Cartesian doubt. Modern philosophy, most philosophers will agree, most scholars will agree, it started with Descartes. Because he did something so different that the Greeks didn't do.
Even though we said Ghazali was before him.
Yeah, you know what? He's quite a copy of Imam Ghazali, I gotta admit. Okay, but again, I'm just starting to touch on Imam Ghazali's work. And when I read it, I was so amazed how similar it was to the Descartes' work, and it comes over 100 years before.
Yeah. Maybe more than that.
Yeah, more than that. Yeah, it's actually more. It's incredible how the Islamic philosophers were so fascinating. And you know, Avicenna touches on a very interesting thought experiment. He calls it the floating man experiment. He's a Muslim philosopher scholar. He said, look, imagine you are a floating man.
Even though he's excommunicated.
I'm still looking into that. Actually. I don't know too much of the story, but the floating man experiment, he says, okay, imagine we take away your eyesight. We take away your hearing. We take away your taste. You're floating in the air. Okay, we take away the dunya. Everything's gone. We take away one thing at a time. You're just floating. Even we take away your spatial orientation. Is there still something? And the answer, if you think about it, is yes. There's a consciousness. What are you conscious of? Nothing really. But there's a consciousness. And he says, you see, he took it a different trajectory, but he found something that you cannot put in a test tube. That is beyond, yes, it's beyond the physical properties.
Yeah.
Now, you see Aristotle, he made a lot of Socrates' lessons very easy to understand. So Socrates would tell you, okay, look at this knife. See this knife? If I show you a knife in metal, and I show you a knife in plastic, and I show you a knife made of wood, and then I show you a drawing of a knife, you're going to tell me, that's a knife, that's a knife, that's a knife. They're all knives. And you're going to tell me they're all knives because they all have something in common. This thing they have in common, we call it the essence. So this table has the same property as all other tables in the history of the world. Every one of them. They all shared in something we call tableness, the essence. If you change the essence, you change the thing. So if I take this table and I make a toothpick out of it, you're going to be like, it's no longer a table, it's now a toothpick. I change the essence, yeah? So Mohammed Hijab, after the age of 7, every single cell in his body has been changed. According to modern science,
Interesting argument, yeah.
every single cell in your body is gone. So how can
It's been replaced.
It's been replaced by a new material.
Yeah.
So now how can we say you're the same Mohammed Hijab? We do say it.
Wow, yeah, exactly.
This is known as the problem of ship of Thesis. So Thesis was a Greek who had a ship. The ship had 99 parts. Every month, one part was changed and put in a garage somewhere, as the part would get old. So after 99 months, I'm paraphrasing here, the ship was brand new parts.
So, yeah.
Still the ship of Thesis, we're still riding on it, the same license, people see it, that's Thesis' ship. Oh, where were you today? I was on Thesis' ship, we refer to it as Thesis' ship. But then we take all the old parts we've been putting in the garage and we reassemble them. Which one is Thesis' ship? Thesis' ship is not out there in the world, it's in here. So we're getting in deep philosophy. We're talking about idealism. Maybe it's too much of a topic for today.
Yeah.
But the idea is there are things that are known by the mind. So Socrates classed it in 2 categories. You have things that are known by the senses, the dunya, the world. That's all dissolving. This glass, 1,000 years from now, is not going to be here. I know it via the senses. It belongs to a category of things, and this is also very in the Buddhist religion, the Islamic religion, in Socratic thought, Greek philosophers, they say, look, this thing is going to dissolve. It's a category of things that dissolve. The things known by the mind never dissolve. Is the number 1 ever going to dissolve? Never. How do we know Mohammed Hijab? We know him by the mind. His body will dissolve. His body has already been changed several times in his life. However, how we know Mohammed Hijab is through the mind. And this is what we call the soul. This is one way we know the soul. The soul is known via the mind. So Socrates said, the soul is a class of things, like how do we know God? We know God via the mind. We know God via intuition, not mathematics or empiricism.
Which is what we call the fitrah.
Which is what we call, that's why I was telling him today earlier. I studied philosophy for so many years before I really delved into Islam. I've only been really studying Islam for 70 years, which is not a long time. If people know Islam, it's not even close to 1%, how much there is to know. But I realized that all the lessons I learned in Western philosophy and in Buddhist and all the great thinkers, I was very fascinated with ideas. It's all in Islam in a very deep and profound level that I think would be too long and drawn out for one video.
No, I get
You
it.
know what I'm saying? But one thing we know is the soul. But we know it directly. It's actually, you know the soul more than you know this table or physical world around you. The soul is more immediate. It's known intuitively.
Are you saying that now we have a first-person subjective experience and this consciousness, and that first-person subjective experience directs us to 2 things: our own existence, the reality of our own existence, but also the existence of a higher metaphysical force, which brought rise to our own existence?
Tell me the story of Adam. Please. Alayhi salam. Tell me the story of Adam. Abbreviate it for me. Tell me. What happened there?
In a nutshell, the Islamic tradition goes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam, okay, and he created Adam from the earth. And when he did so,
A material substance.
a material substance.
Okay.
But when he did so, he breathed into his soul. And when he did so,
He
then
breathed
became
into him
living.
the soul. Where is the soul? How is it known?
Yeah, so the Quran asks, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ قُلْ رُوحٌ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي. So they ask you about the soul. Say that the soul is from the command of my Lord, and that you won't know much about it. So in other words, frankly, from our perspective, not much has been given in terms of information. All we know from the Islamic perspective, once again, is that number 1, the soul is something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or God Almighty, implanted or ensouled Adam with, made him viable through it, and afterwards all of human beings had the same feature. Because the hadith is a hadith in our tradition of which is very well known. It's like Ibn Mas'ud narrated it. It says that the human being is created 40 days in his womb, in one form, and then 40 days X, Y, Z. And then he said at the end of it, then the angel breathes into the human being the soul. So the soul is a feature of every human being.
Now, can I ask you a question? Are we made of one soul or many souls?
Every human being has one soul.
But are we made of one soul? Does it make any comment on if we're made by one soul, original soul?
What? That each human being has.
Do we share in the same soul? Or is it individual soul?
Every individual has a specific soul inside of them.
But this is the metaphysical property. So we have a story in the Quran that says, look, there's this material substance, okay, we can test it scientifically, but then there's an ingredient we don't know much about.
Yeah.
But this ingredient, you're experiencing it directly.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, it flies in the face of science.
Yes.
When you ask a materialist philosopher,
because science has naturalistic presuppositions. It's all about materialism.
that's all. When we ask
the
the scientist,
yeah.
how come I'm conscious? The answer is we don't know. Mystery. We don't know. They will never know.
Yeah.
They will never know.
No.
Now, we have in philosophy we have a paradox called the Chinese room. Sorry, a thought experiment, not a paradox.
Yeah.
It's called the Chinese room. Okay, so the Chinese room is, you're in a room, and I'm outside the room, and I slide in a Chinese character. The Chinese character says, hello. And I slide it in the room, and you slide back to me, hello to you too. And I slide you a note saying, how are you? And you slide me back, very good, and you. And we're having this Chinese conversation. And then I open the door, and I see it's you. I say, you speak Chinese? You're like, no, I don't speak Chinese. But we're having a conversation. I said, every time you slide me a character, I look in the book, this character, when you get it, send out this response. This is how a robot works. The robot doesn't understand the essence of words. He's just following an algorithm. They can get so sophisticated that they give you the impression that they're human.
Yeah.
Like, one time the scientists were trying to mock Descartes, and they made a computer type, I think therefore I am. They would print that out every so often. To say, look, even the computer thinks it's conscious, but it's not. And they were poking fun at Descartes. But really what they were doing was they're proving they have consciousness. Because that is just an extension of you. If you really think about it, somebody has to have consciousness to say, I think therefore I am. Long story short, is people, when you see a robot, a very sophisticated robot, people think, oh, one day they'll have consciousness. No. They'll give the appearance of consciousness. They'll be very sophisticated and talk, and act. But we saw that the Mohammed Hijab robot that we were building, it's a destruction of property. Have you ever seen the movie Castaway? Tom Hanks.
Is that?
Oh, that one, the one alone on the
Yeah, he's alone on the island.
I've seen that. He talks to the football, remember?
He talks to the football.
Wilson's.
Wilson.
Yes, I
and he
know
loses
Wilson.
Wilson. And he's crying.
Yeah.
Does Wilson have a mind? But he projected his own mind onto Wilson. One day we're going to have robots and we're going to project our own mind onto them. You can project your mind. Some people talk to their imaginary friend.
Okay.
The mind can be projected. It can do so many
And
things.
that's basically what you're saying, the input for a robot.
Right. People are going to be like, oh no, robots can have consciousness one day. No, they cannot. Think about the Pinocchio story. I want to be a real boy. How did they make him a real boy? They had to bring in some kind of metaphysical element. We're living proof of metaphysics. We're living proof of a miracle. Me, I don't need Richard Dawkins to tell me if I'm going to live again or whatnot. I know the part of me belongs to the class of the mind. It's only known by the mind. Mathematics will never get old and rust and die. The things known by the mind are not subject to corrosion, so to speak. And I really always love the profound question the Quran asks. You know, again, my Quran is very weak, but I know that there's a part where they ask, you know, will we be resurrected? What brought you here the first time? You see, Socrates has a very interesting dialogue he has in the Phaedo. He says, look, if you grew taller, you were first shorter. You can't grow taller if you were not first shorter. Impossible. They generate one another. So if I fell asleep, first I was awake. And if I wake up, first I was asleep. And you can do this with all the opposites. If I was cold, first I was warmer. If I became warmer, first I was colder. There's no escaping it. They're tied together. Wallahi, you can examine it for thousands of years, and they have. The greatest minds have examined it. And we cannot say that one doesn't generate the other. When was your birthday?
5th of October.
Okay, where were you a year before the 5th of October? You were not living.
Oh yeah.
You were not alive. You came to life. Yeah, there was a time and moment in space, whatever the date was exactly, you came to life. What were you before you came to life? Socrates would tell you, and I would agree, that some people have an emotional attachment to answer this question. The truth is, you were not living, you were dead. But you came to life, it already happened. Well, you know, it already happened. And if you were to go with the scientific method today, science would tell you, look, you're never going to come to life. If I knew science before I came to life, they would tell me, look, it's impossible. The world you're talking about is impossible. If this world is possible, it's a contingent. Remember, we're talking about Leibniz. This world is a contingent, meaning it could have been another way. If this world exists, it's very possible there are other worlds that exist. Why not? If you understand cause and effect, you would know that if this world is possible, any world is possible. As a matter of fact, if you follow regeneration, what Socrates says, it says, look, if everything went from life to death and never reciprocated again, everything would be dead by now. Everything would be dead. If time is infinite, the cycle would have been done. If it was a one-time thing. This is complicated thinking. It is. It's very advanced deduction. Very advanced. But the truth of the matter is, like, upon learning these things, I really found them often in the Quran in abundance. And it's fascinating. It's very fascinating.
I see. That's really interesting information. And I think it's one of the things that we really don't stress enough. I think of the consciousness, the hard problem of consciousness. It is a very unique argument. It does require a bit of brain juice, if you like, hard thinking, if you will, yeah? But it's definitely something that's good to put out there. Moving on to another issue now, I just wanted to kind of put out some kind of things, social things. Obviously we live in the West, we're Muslims and all these things, and we're oftentimes accused of, okay, well, Muslims are accused, generally speaking, by the right wing. I'm not sure how it is in Canada.
Keep an eye on can you see the red dot?
Yeah.
If that goes off, that means we have to change again, yeah?
Alright.
Start again. Because every 30 minutes, stop.
That's right. I don't know how it is in Canada, but here in the UK and we know in the US as well, there is this kind of now a growing right-wing trend, a lot of attack on Islam and these kind of things, and accusations of extremism and these kind of things. So, how have you found that yourself, and how would you advise Muslims to respond to that in your way?
Well, I think the best thing is behave well, be a just person. Be a just person. If you have information, share it. If you don't know, research it and learn it. The worst thing you can do is talk out of ignorance or anger, frustration. But really, adab, show a good adab. And what's Islam about? Islam is about many central themes. But one central theme is justice.
Yes.
Fairness. Me, I'd rather suffer the consequence than be unfair with somebody. I'd rather lose $100 than be unfair and keep my $100. Wallahi. Because I find justice to be beautiful, and I find that one of the central themes of Islam is justice. That's why I find Islam beautiful. Even the Arabs at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they thought that the camel having rights was absurd. He was too progressive for them. Now Islam, for me, I see it as a direction. The Prophet ﷺ, he took the Arabs one step at a time towards a direction. More and more lenient, more and more forgiving, more and more tolerant, more and more loving, more and more caring. And we have to continue this trend today. If the Prophet ﷺ was alive today, he would be the most merciful, the most friendly, the most kind, the most generous. I believe that because George Bernard Shaw, after reading the Sirah, he said, if this man was alive today, he would solve many of the world's problems. Because like we were talking earlier today about William Deltley, a German philosopher, says, look, we're all made of the same internal stuff. This thing you have inside you, we've just been talking about, your consciousness, this stuff. You share with every human being. So you can transport yourself in their shoes. If you really put your mind in their place and their time, and if you don't look at it from your perspective, if you're a really open-minded human being, you put yourself in their shoes, literally, mentally speaking, and see the world the way they see it. They were the most lenient, progressive, and forgiving, and honest human beings. That's how I see it. And we have to continue this trend. We have to continue this trend because the truth of the matter is, this is what Islam was seen as. Slaves were Muslim. The first Muslim was a woman, and so on and so on and so on. These were seen as crazy ideas back then.
I mean, you see, like, we started the show talking about Joe Rogan having a high regard for you. I mean, he mentioned you as one of the best.
Over hundreds of years. And so the civilizations, they went through different cycles. The last cycle is when they become corrupt. Decadence. They start cheating, fighting, killing one another. They're infighting, a lot of infighting. And this infighting causes the suicide in the nation. So nations are not murdered, they commit suicide. Why? They become corrupt. The more corruption, the more chance of them being overtaken by competing nation. Islam and Christianity kept corruption at bay. Now, of course, there was corruption that crept in every single type of, we know that, okay, we have ISIS. The Christians, they have their KKK, among other problems in the Catholicism, the priests, etc. Yes, but these are people who did bad things, but this is not a religion, it's not a creed. It's not the creed. So for instance, if a secular American does something wrong, I don't say, hey, that's the Constitution, that's what you get. That's not what I say. I say that individual, he decided to do something bad. And there's so much to weed out because the media loves to blame groups that they compete with. Plato asked a very interesting question. He asked a very, very interesting question. He said, look, does God say something is good or bad because its nature is good or bad? Or is it good or bad because Allah said so? Because God said it's bad. Therefore, whatever He says is bad by Him saying so. Or is it its nature bad? Is it haram by nature? He said, look, if you believe in God, if Allah says something is haram, bad, it's bad. We don't need to ask more because God is not questionable. If you don't believe in God, it's all aesthetics. Do you find it to be haram or halal? Or is it ugly? If you find it to be ugly, you think it's bad. If you find it to be beautiful, you find it to be good. So if you don't believe in a God, good and bad becomes beautiful and ugly. Whatever you find beautiful is good. Whatever you find ugly is bad. If you think about it, this is really what it is. And that's why when I was reading in the Quran, I was like amazed. And they say, follow your lusts. Wallahi, this is the ethics. If you don't believe in Allah, you follow your lusts. That's it. That's what ethics boils down to. When somebody tells me I hate Islam, what I hear, he defines Islam to be ugly. Why? Because he wasn't raised this way. Now, there's a lot of beauty in Islam. You have to study it to know. But this person didn't study it. There's a lot of beauty in Christianity as well. A lot of beauty in Judaism as well. But you have to go beyond the rumors that you hear. Because there are deep and profound lessons in all the traditions. And people just live a superficial life in the West, generally speaking. Not everybody, I don't want to generalize, but the recent trend is to be superficial. Capitalism is go buy more. Yes, there's poor people or whatnot, but go buy more. Consume more, buy more, you'll be more happy. The truth of the matter is you won't be. You can have plenty of material goods. Proof of that is, where is the most depression in the world?
The West.
Because
there was a study that was done, I was quite interested in seeing that, where Forbes magazine, I think in WHO, they looked at depression in countries and they said that their top 20 was all basically Western countries with the exception of, I think, Nigeria.
But they have real problems.
Number one was the USA.
And they take the most antidepressant.
Yeah, that's right.
The most pills for psychological ailments. But the number of psychological ailments is on the rise. How come the pills, the cures are on the rise and the ailments on the rise? It's become an epidemic. And that's why I felt like I had an edge growing up, like I was saying earlier. Because me, I just believed in God. So they used to tell me, if Allah takes something from you,
You don't think?
say inshallah, tomorrow He'll take something better. Yeah, I believe it.
She's saying before.
So I always had a strong mental mind. I had a strong mind growing up. And I still feel there today because I go through bad times like everybody else.
Yeah.
But I love what Hamza Yusuf said. He said, hopelessness is a bid'ah. You want a bid'ah? He said. Because Muslims, they argue about bid'ah. This is the bid'ah. He said, you want a bid'ah? Bid'ah is hopelessness. That's a bid'ah. could never have hopelessness. And of course, if anybody who's familiar with the seerah, they know there's never hopelessness. It doesn't exist. And again, these are like one famous writer, Stephen R. Covey. Because I read a lot of books, from every corner of the globe.
7 steps.
7 habits of highly effective people.
Yeah.
He says, look, if you believe, he says, look, you got to build your life. Very similar to Islamic thinking. He said, you have to build your life on a foundation, something unshakable. If you build your life,
This guy was a Mormon. Yeah.
was he?
Yeah, I think it was.
He said, if you build your life on your spouse,
Yeah.
maybe your spouse leaves you one day, your whole life will come crumbling.
Yeah.
If your edifice, your building, is built on a stone that's shaky, you'll always be insecure. So maybe you build it on your wealth. Your wealth can be taken from you. Maybe you build it on your health, your youth. That's going to be taken from you. Everything in the dunya, everything in the world can be taken from you. So even if you have a firm grasp, you always have a deep sense of insecurity. So he says, look, if you believe in God, put God obviously first.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe in God, he says at least put your principles. Meaning, I'm going to be honest, respectful. Who are you really? And never compromise it. But the problem, I found the principle argument to be a second best. Because even yourself, you could be tempted. I'm always going to be weak. I can maybe be tempted or go through a phase in my life that I might betray my own principles. It's not surety. I'm not sure. I still have a fundamental insecurity.
Yeah.
So I think the healthiest psychological mind, he believes in God. He accepts his nature. I have this part of me that's miraculous, that's unique, that science cannot even comment on. So I don't need the permissions of these scientists. I don't need to bow down to them and be awestruck with them. You know, I was asking you earlier one of your favorite hadiths. What?
Did I give you an answer?
You did. But it's a very advanced one. Let's say it's a very advanced one. I'm gonna keep that one. But one hadith, and you tell me its authenticity, is supposedly, what I was told, the Prophet told some kids to chase their shadow.
You guys want tea?
Oh no, I'm good, thank you. Huh? Told them chase your
We'll have to
shadow.
look at that one.
Why?
I don't know.
He said chase your shadow.
Yeah.
This is what I was told when I was young, so I really. It's
not-
at least with the theme of Islam.
There is a statement of Ibn Qayyim, Al-Jawziyya. He said that chasing the dunya is like chasing the shadow.
Similar. Maybe it was paraphrased. But the way I was told, he told chase your shadow. When they couldn't catch it, okay, we couldn't catch it. He said now chase the sun.
Other channel.
And when they came back, said, what was the lesson? He said when you chase the dunya, it's like you're chasing your shadow. You never catch it. When you chase Allah, the dunya runs after you. It was a very profound. So I never groveled growing up, and I felt I got a respect for my peers. I had a strong, I don't know how to say it, but I had a strong backbone, English. And I never believed something was impossible. Like when I started learning jiu-jitsu, I had nobody really to teach me. Wallahi.
I'm happy that you brought this in because in the time that we have left, what I want to do in the next episode, even if it's going to be a short episode, we want to talk about, because this is your area of specialism. It's another area of specialism.
It's pretty good. Don't worry, it's not.
I want to talk about basically like keeping healthy, keeping fit, keeping strong, because it's like, you know, Plato, you talk about Plato, right? And this is quite a simplistic model, but I think it's quite an effective one. Having a mind, body, and soul connection, like all those three things have to be to some extent, you know, satiated. They have to be stimulated, if you will. Yeah. So I want to talk to you about that in the next episode. But if you did like this episode, guys, now you see the other side of Firas Zahabi, which is a very deeply critical side, a well-read side, and a side we don't get to see or hear of much often because you are involved in, you know, more, maybe you could say, visually exciting things. But in the next episode, we are going to be talking about those visually exciting things and how to take care of yourself, maybe on a physical level. Make sure you subscribe to the page and you subscribe to Firas Zahabi's page as well. He's got a really good YouTube channel, instructionals on different fight techniques, and he is according to Joe Rogan even, you know, one of the best, if not the best in the world. So you're going to check that out in the description box, and I'll see you in the next video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
What's the channel name?
Try start.
Yeah, I'll put it in I'll plug it in the next one. And then, okay. Alright, should we do this? Should we just continue it?
Yeah, just continue. Yeah, the next one. Yeah.
Alright. Alright, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, guys. Now, today we're going to be talking about some very important things. Now, I'm joined by a very important guest. If you watched the other video that we put forward, you would have known who it is. It's Firas Zahabi, who is arguably one of, if not the most celebrated MMA coaches in all of UFC and all of the world, really, according to some people, including Joe Rogan. We talked about this in the previous video. So what we're gonna do in this episode here is just talk generally about. I mean, not everyone wants to live a life where they're kind of going to work and coming back and these things and having good, I don't know, treats like this. I don't know what this is. Maybe that's.
It's baklava.
This is your training video. It's baklava.
It's not that.
Step one.
It's not what. So you can have fun. Okay, so look, it's not going to be a depressing video, guys. Okay? Because it shows you that even someone who's engaged in sports on a daily basis, trains the athlete, has a bit of fun sometimes. How should we eat?
Well, I'll tell you. I believe that with the knowledge we have today, scientifically, the advancements, everybody should be within a healthy body weight.
Right.
Because we know the benefits of it.
What would you define as a healthy body weight?
A young male should be between 9 and 15% body fat.
Okay.
Roughly speaking. Now there are going to be some anomalies. But that's somebody in very good shape. But why shouldn't you be in good shape? We have so much science behind fitness. Now we know we can get in shape in 5 to 10 minutes a day. Who doesn't have 5 to 10 minutes a day to keep their body, their most prized machine, healthy? You have time to fix your car and clean up your room, but you don't have time to keep your body healthy? You have to prioritize. Now,
what kind of tips would you give? Like, if now someone wants to start eating healthy, they want to start taking care of themselves. Well, what are like the rules of thumb?
if I can boil it down in 3, I like to keep things simple. 3 rules. I find it's the easiest way to learn. Learn 3 things at a time on any subject. 1 would be know how many calories you can eat in a day. You can go on many websites, you find out how much your body, through your size, your age, your weight, your goal for your weight, how many calories should you eat in a day. There's many programs. And then practice calculating your calories. After a while, you'll just look at a piece of food and you'll know about how many calories. Now, you don't have to be perfectly exact, but over time, after about a month and a half, you'll be an expert. You'll be an expert. This is this how many calories, this is that many calories, this is, I'm close to my quota for the day. Know how many calories you should have in a day.
Yeah. Okay.
You'll know that having that cookie is going to cost me this many calories, I'm not going to do it. Once you get to your goal, let's say you get to 8% body fat, 9% body fat, whatever it is. Now you can have more off days, more days of splurging. Like, I eat this today, I'm not worried. I'm going to stay my body fat. I'm not going to, you cannot gain more than 1 pound, 1.5 pounds of fat in a week. If you binged all week, you can gain water weight, yes. So you have to know that your goal, once you get to it, it's easier to maintain than to get there. So I found it very encouraging. So how many calories do you eat a day? Figure that out. You're going to have to experiment. If you're a little bit lightheaded, that number is a little bit low. You have to tweak it. If you're not losing a lot of weight after 2-3 weeks of doing it, it might be a little high. You got to lower it. It's not an exact science. There is some adjusting that needs to be done. But the good news is it's very simple. If you're feeling bad, increase a small amount. Increase your calories by 5 or 10%. And now, once you find that number, you'll find yourself full just eating that amount every day.
5 minutes before 1, bring the mistake.
Second, I would say a good rule of thumb would be to eat the same foods every day. Like I have meals I make that are 300 calories. I know.
Give us an example of your meal.
I do one meal that I do almost every day is 1 banana, 2 eggs. I mash them up. I make a pancake. I make 3 pancakes with
Is
it.
that how you make a pancake?
Yeah, mash them up. I make a pancake, and I add 50 calories worth of honey. I love honey, so I'm eating things I love. Pancakes.
Sunnah food.
Yeah, of course.
Sunnah.
Of course. I know that's 290 calories. I have dates. There's 75 calories each. I know how many right away.
Again, Sunnah food.
Sunnah food. Dates is amazing for training. The best. Sugar, fiber, carbohydrate, slow releasing, easy to digest, and it's the perfect food. I always buy a
You had a
box of
feeling that will
dates.
happen.
I have certain smoothies I make. I know they're 300 calories. I know my blocks of calories. And if I'm in the mood to eat a hamburger, I know that a Big Mac is 560 calories. I can fit it in my day. I don't feel I'm deprived. Now, I don't always eat junk. I eat salads and fruits and vegetables, natural foods. But I know how many calories I should eat in a day. And for me, it keeps me lean, healthy, and it keeps the energy going. Because if you eat too many calories in a day, you'll feel lethargic. If you eat too little, you'll feel lightheaded and weak.
How do you keep that? Because that's one thing that I struggle with. Every day I feel tired. Like, how do I change that?
Know the right amount of calories.
Yeah.
Eat the healthiest food possible. The most nutrient dense.
Yeah.
And 3, I would say, you have to have a cheat meal here and there. Never let your cravings get out of control. If you're not at your target weight, have 1 or 2 cheat meals a week. Meals, not days, cheat days. 1 or 2 cheat meals.
What would you define as a cheat meal?
What's the cheat?
A burger, fries,
Okay.
and a dessert.
See, now you get
Come to Efes, Turkish restaurant, and have a nice meal.
Yeah.
Don't go overboard, but have a nice meal. Don't let your cravings get out of control. When I see something I want to eat, I say, when I see something I want to eat, I'm like, okay, Saturday it's my cheat meal, I'm having that. So I look forward to it. The motivation is very important, And, every year on my birthday, I have to be 9% body fat. I do my diet, I make sure that every year, so my body doesn't age without me knowing. I keep it under control. I'm 38 years old. I train every day, all day long.
You're 41.
Next practice. Next practice. Let's see who's older. One of my students one time, wrestling, he's like, Coach, you're getting old. I said, it's been 10 years. You haven't taken me down once. Take me down once and then say, your coach, you're getting old. Because I haven't taken you down in 10 years and today I took you down. Still, he hasn't taken me down. So, Coach, are you getting old? How old are you now? Yeah, Latif, you haven't got one takedown. The rest of 10 years, I'm still waiting for you to take me down. You can age well. Aging.
This guy's been persistent. For 10 years trying with him to take him down.
Yeah, he's got the persistence. The thing is, with our technology we have today, the modern knowledge we have today, wallahi, aging is something it could be done very well. We have so much knowledge today. Health comes from eating right and exercise.
What do you think about meat? Because that was like the whole thing of not eating meat.
I would say I like Dr. Joel Furman. He says 2 deck of cards a week. So about a deck of cards worth
of red meat or normal meat or what?
Red meat twice a week, not more than that. I think that's the ultimate. The optimal. I go over that. We have such great food all the time. We're traveling. But it's the optimal. When I do that, I feel my best. And when I'm losing weight, I try to lower my red meat. I try to eat more fruits and vegetables. And you feel amazing.
Yeah.
But then again, you go to these great restaurants, I don't want to deny myself. So, but next week, on this trip, I ate a little too much. Next week, I'm going to be more strict. Me, at the weight I am now, I do 4 or 5 days of the right amount of calories, I lose weight right away. But I also train a lot. It has to be reflective of how active you are. When you do these websites and you go on these forums, they're going to ask you, how active is your lifestyle? Very, moderate?
Oh, you train every day?
I train every day. I do train a lot.
Do you have 1 day rest?
1 day rest on Sunday, yeah. Okay. I think about 1 day a week off.
And okay, let's move on to training now. since you talked about training. Your training is mostly, what's your training like?
You know what, me, I can't run on a treadmill. I can't lift weight, it's too boring. I've been training a long time. For me, training is a play, it's a game.
And you train GSP as well? Right?
Yeah, George St. Pierre, of course, many other great fighters. Yeah. I do jiu-jitsu, wrestling, kickboxing, boxing. These things, if you tell me we're going to wrestle for 1 hour, to me 1 hour is nothing, wrestling. You tell me run on a treadmill for an hour, after 10 minutes, I'm not tired, I'm bored.
And all your fighters,
I'm bored.
Do they have the same kind of philosophy that they don't run and they don't...
No, if you're competing, you're going to have the motivation to go run. Because training is 99% motivation. Yeah. One thing I tell my wife, if I don't make the 9% on my birthday, I'll give you 5,000 as a gift.
Wow.
I'm not going to listen. The chances of missing are going to be less than 1%. You know what I mean? I'm never going to, But she'll try to tempt me with, we make it fun. She'll try to tempt me with cakes, honey, have this. But you need motivation. Wallahi, this is true. When it comes to training, motivation is important. Like me, my sons, I train my sons. I tell my sons, if you train, I'll give you anything you want. What do you want? This toy, that toy? Yes, the answer is yes. But train every day, do your schoolwork every day. The answer is yes. We save our money and we buy it. That's what you want? No problem. You want to eat McDonald's? No problem. One time I was eating 3-4 Big Macs. My son looked at me and said, Papa, how come you're not fat? I said, son, I train every single day.
Or do they have halal in Canada?
No. I was too hungry. I was eating. I eat it all.
No, if I have that opinion, you know, no, there are some opinions that say it's alright.
Yeah, no, I've heard of that actually. I heard. But you know, I didn't grow up eating halal, to be honest with you. So we're always used to eating whatever. It was not very common, halal. And
What? Even now? Canada?
no, I don't know. I'm sure it is, but you'd have to go out of your way. You know, it's not as common as here. Here I saw Kentucky is halal.
Is it?
Yeah, I saw
It's
Kentucky
most
Fried
places.
Chicken halal.
Yeah.
Subway's halal.
Yeah.
Yeah, most places.
It's the Muslim pound. So most of the big companies
Okay.
are now.
Yeah, good. It's convenient. But anyways, I gotta stop myself. I train every day. It's like it's not a question whether I'm gonna train or not. It's not a question. It's a habit.
And what's your training like? How many hours do you train?
I don't know. Wallahi, how many hours do we train today? That's my day every day.
2.5.
That's my day every day. Twice a day.
Do you
Sometimes-
do the sparring
Yeah,
every day as
of
well?
course. Of course. You see my video?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
I spar too. Yeah, I spar. And today I didn't train much. I have an injured rib.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you one thing. Here's my philosophy on training.
Yeah.
There's no excuse.
Okay.
No excuse. Can you do one push-up a day? I'll tell you the biggest secret to training.
Yeah.
Never train 100%. Train always 70 to 80%. Save some for tomorrow. So if somebody's completely out of shape, let's say the guy, he hasn't trained in 10 years. I tell him, okay, tomorrow do one push-up. Just one.
me.
Don't tell me you don't have the time. Now if you tell me you don't have the time, khalas, I don't believe you. You're not serious about being healthy.
Okay.
You have given up. I call that defeatism.
Yes.
You've given up.
That's true.
I agree. Can you do one push-up? Don't give me one push-up. That one push-up is going to turn to two. Two is going to be enjoyable at one point. Actually, you're going to crave number three. And then after that, number three is going to turn to a 5 because 3 is uncomfortable. It's not as satisfying as doing 5. It's going to grow. And you've created a spark, a habit. For me now, I'm at the point where I train 3 hours, and for me, it's a regular day. Maybe somebody trained 3 hours. Wow, that was exhausting. For me, it's just a regular day. I got to that point. But it's one step at a time. One click. So me, when I train someone, I hold their hand until they're too strong and they're carrying me. You know what I mean? You could take them step by step. My sons, I started with a little bit of training. A little bit. And then a little more. And then training is now mandatory. If you want the things you like, homework and training is mandatory. Before it was just a game. And now, Baba, I want this. Okay, no problem. We save our money for it. But if you have good discipline, I give you everything. I think the worst thing you could do to a child is give them without them earning. The worst. I'm a very serious father. I read a lot of books on raising children. And especially I have a background in philosophy. I have philosophized a lot about raising children. And children need to develop their competence. The more competence they have, the more confidence.
I want to ask you a question on that actually. Not just on children, but just on young people growing up. Because obviously, like, not just Muslims, but a lot of people in the West now have this self-insecurity. Yeah? And do you know what?
Participation trophy.
Yeah.
And so on.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, like, what do you... I think this is one thing that, out of all people, you're the best person to ask, probably, to have asked. It's a quality that people don't talk about now. Yeah? Bravery. You do fighting. I mean, you train a lot of fighters. You've seen a lot. What's the best way to build bravery?
I would say developing competence. The more competence you have, the byproduct is confidence. You understand?
Yeah.
So the more I prepared, I always tell people this. If your competence is here, your confidence should be here. If your competence is here and your confidence is here, the world is going to shut you down. If your competence is here and your confidence is here, you won't live up to your potential. So what we need is to be realistic. If you drive your car every day to work safely, you should assume that tomorrow you'll drive your car to work safely. If you're getting into an accident every 2 days, I'm gonna tell you, Muhammad, don't take the car today. I'm not confident you can drive. So this is why I like to coin the term that I heard Kelly Stark say. He said, test, measure, retest. And build your confidence accordingly. This I think is sensible. So kids, young kids, the reason why they lack confidence is because, you know, I hate to bring philosophy in all the time, but you ever heard of Nietzsche's Last Man? Nietzsche says, look, the last man.
Which one is that? Yeah, I remember his Ubermensch.
Yes, the opposite of the last man.
Yeah, it's the opposite, yeah.
He says, look, society's creating. Socrates talked about this as well. Okay, look, think about it. You have pioneers, people who you have nothing. When you have nothing, you fight, you claw your way to the top.
Yeah.
And then you have something. And your son, he saw you work hard. You're the first generation of workers. You came to the land and you toiled the land and you farmed and you built. And your son, he saw. But your son's life is better than yours. Why? Because now I have things to give you, where I had nothing. And tomorrow when I die, you have inheritance. So you started higher than me. I boosted you up. And then your son is going to see you didn't work as hard, but you had so much. And the third child is even richer. And he just got. He didn't work. He just got. And okay, it takes more than 3 generations, so to speak. But there's a generation they're spoiled. That's what Nietzsche said. Look, society is making us more and more spoiled because the hand-me-downs are coming. And then one day you're a fat cat on a silk pillow. But the world out there is too hard for you. So you have this deep insecurity. You can't go out there in the world and get a kill and bring it back home for us to eat. The comforts of the world, and I can give you many examples throughout history, many. The comforts of the world have become a prison to you. So now when I tell my kids, my wife, I never want to be soft. To be the guy who just tells people what to do, but I can't do it too. I fear one day I'm going to become old. And I have to become sidelined. But then I'm going to feel softer. I feel like I don't want to be the guy on the pillow, the silk pillow, so to speak. People think being born in abundance and money it's a blessing. It can be. It can also be a curse to have everything. So I mean, there's so much to know about raising a healthy human being.
So you're saying bravery is contingent on
competence.
Yeah. So get confidence.
True bravery, because the thing is, people can act confident, but they're masking a layer of insecurity. And this is quite common the case.
Yes.
Bluff. It's a bluff. So yeah, I believe in raising competences. If you want to make somebody healthy and happy, raise their competence. Imagine, do a thought experiment. Imagine you could survive in the wild right now, perfectly comfortable. Tomorrow, if the government froze your bank account, kicked you out of the home, threw you out in the street, kicked you out of you wouldn't even sweat one beat. Why? I remember a story about a burglar, the greatest burglar of all time. Okay? The greatest burglar of all time. I believe his name was, if I remember correctly, Henry Manchester. I was a young kid when I heard his story. I watched a documentary on it. I couldn't believe the confidence this man had. 14 years he's robbing banks and stores and everybody. He's robbing everybody. They call him the rooftop burglar. He would make a hole in the rooftop, read the manual of the alarm, disable the alarm. Untouchable, this guy. One day they caught him. And he confessed to all the crimes. They're like, you confessed to all the crimes? Like, yeah, I did all those burglaries. He wanted to be famous. When they put him in jail, he was so smart. He got out of the jail. Like, he was so confident. Because why? He had he was a genius. Wallah, he was a genius. At the end, he ended up getting caught because he fell in love with a girl. And the girl called the cops on him. He wasn't emotionally. He had high IQ, but not EQ. EQ is no good, EQ. Yeah. Emotional intelligence, 0. IQ, huge. But you see, I remember watching that documentary. His confidence was incredible. Yeah. But they can't even hold him in the prison. He's too smart. You understand? So this confidence comes from legitimate developing your skills. That's why I always tell my students. I've raised thousands of young men. I always encourage them to exploit their potential. God gave you a potential to learn, to think, to study, to increase your thinking. Exploit it. It's a gift.
That's what the Prophet said. He said, take 5 before 5. And I wanted it to ghanima is basically a war booty. In other words, take like the treasures of 5 things before 5 things come. So he said one of the things he said is health before illness comes, youth before old age comes. For example. These are some of the 5 things. He said. It's quite similar. Guys, I mean, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for watching that. It was excellent. I think a lot of people take a lot of benefit from that, because I think this is an aspect that people sometimes neglect, right? And people sometimes forget that being physical, being emotionally intact and mature is also a very important part of being a human being and functioning in life. So thanks for that. It was really good advice. Now, obviously, for us, it's got a YouTube channel where you do your like tutorials and stuff like that. It's called TriStar. It's the TriStar Gym, which is a gym where obviously some of the greatest fighters really have trained and have all these videos on there. So anyone who wants to go on there and to watch those videos are very, very beneficial. And you have talks as well. You talk about nutrition, you talk about these kind of similar discussions as we've had today. So that's also on there. And thanks for listening, guys. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
He says it in his lecture. There's never been a golden age in science greater than the golden age of Islam. During the golden age of Islam was the golden age of science. There's never been a greater golden age before or after. He says it in his speech. He even admits it.
Who says that? What's his name?
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
And where does he say it?
He says it in one of his lectures. I'll send it to you. He's very open about it. He understands. He says, look, the stars are Arabic names. Why do you think that is? Because the Arabs were great astronomers and they pushed science to the greatest degree. But when the Mongolians came and burned our libraries and crushed the Muslim empire, the blowback was, hey, we have to go make it right with Allah. We were too much in the dunya. Now, again, I'm not an expert in this. This is what I've understood from the lectures I've listened to, from the evidence I've been trying to accumulate. What happened to the golden age? Is that the blowback was, look, we got so much fascinated about the dunya and studying the dunya, we forgot about the deen. So Imam Ghazali was trying to tell them, look, come back to the deen, like, go back to this is how they interpret it. This was because, don't forget, this is obviously it wasn't Genghis Khan, it was Hulagu, his grandson. But supposedly, according to Yasir Qadi, he says, look, when Genghis Khan came to the mosque, I can't remember which one, but it was a prominent mosque, a famous mosque. He says, look, I'm your qadr Allah, I'm your sins. I'm here because for your punishment of your sins, so to speak. He understood the deen, right? No man can do anything to you if Allah doesn't allow him. So he's telling, look, Allah has allowed me to do this to you because of your sins. So in Imam Ghazali's time, from what I understand, because Imam Ghazali, from what I understand, was very pro-philosophy and pro-learning and pro-science, etc. However, he was also trying to bring them back to spirituality. And this may be the case, but it's time for a recovery. It's time for us to start being more open. I mean, we are. I mean, people, Muslims go to school, etc. But it doesn't mean because you're religious you can't be scientific. It doesn't mean because you're scientific you can't learn about the deen. They're not exclusive. You shouldn't be.